Welcome to Savvy Business, Life Unscripted, with your host, Christina Rivera, where our guests share their wisdom and valuable business tips, empowering our audience to expand their personal potential.
Welcome, Joey Klein, to Savvy Broadcasting and Life Unscripted. We're so grateful to have you for our Life After COVID series. This series is meant to really get businesses out there thriving again. Some businesses have had a real trouble at it. It's been a tough year, but some businesses have still been kicking butt. And you are one amazing CEO, inner matrix system that's helped people transcend and beat any difficulty to really thrive in their business. Welcome to Savvy.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
You betcha. Now, share a little bit about your company and what brought you to the world of entrepreneurship.
Yeah, so I found my way into my business kind of accidentally. I definitely did not set out to do what I'm doing today. I was actually a teenager and kind of in my early adult life and just wanting to figure out how to make things work. I grew up in a small town, Wichita, Kansas, and didn't have a lot of inspirational role models around me and people's lives whom I wanted to emulate. I was in a lot of pain, so I threw myself into personal development. And that took me inside of a very untraditional education. I ended up, studying with modern psychologists, modern day neurologists, neurobiology. I spent months meditating in ashrams in like India and Thailand, etc. And eventually, I really found a system that worked for me, where I was able to access peace and fulfillment. And just kind of found the formula that made life work, so to speak. People started asking me questions about what I was doing, close families and friends. They started referring me clients. I literally had a mentor say, you really should charge for this. So I picked a number out of thin air, started charging people. And then, 20 years later, we operate all over the world. We teach seminars to, thousands and thousands of people. And then I've got a one-on-one practice. So it quickly took a life on of its own. So that's how I figured it out. Then I had to learn business skills to make all that work.
Yeah, it's amazing you say that, Joe. You say you were under pain that kind of prompted you to look deeper. Was the pain more, was it physical or is it spiritual? What was the pain in particular?
For me, it was more emotional. Like I just had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. I was, partying like really, really hard. And I just woke up one day and realized, like, if I continue living the way that I'm living, it's very unlikely that I'll be alive in a year. So I kind of had that wake up call by way of a series of events that occurred. And it was just real obvious that I couldn't continue the way that I was continuing. Like I was lucky that I was sort of still alive. And so I decided a radical change was necessary if I was going to, not only be alive in a year, but ultimately create something with my life and do something more than just party my life away. So that was that inflection point for me.
Well, it's amazing. A lot of the past Savvy guests have come around that point, either having a pain point or a crisis in their life that was like the pivotal turning point that, okay, this isn't working for me anymore. And a lot of times it's things they did naturally. Like when you decided to go inward and then found all these things that, boom, this is working. And other people are like, hey, show me what you're doing because it's rocking. I love what I see with your life. And a lot of times we take that for granted. And I love that you said, oh, I just picked a number out of the sky. Oh, we'll charge that. And a lot of times, that's how you get started with business. You don't know. You just, have to pick out something. When we first started at Savvy, someone said, can I be an advertiser? I'm like, yeah, I'll check with my sales department to see what we charge for that. I didn't have a sales department, but you get started. So now you've gotten started and people started coming to you. What does it look like when people come to work with you in the Matrix system? What does the whole package look like?
Well, I think people come to us in one of two places in life. They're either, similar to what I just described. They've hit a challenge or pain point in their life, and they're like, it needs to change, and it needs to change now. And what I find, like, I really love working with people when they're in a place of chaos or extreme pain, because human beings are highly motivated in that space to do things that they just wouldn't normally be willing to do under other circumstances. The other side of the spectrum, people come to us and they go, hey, I have this result and this outcome that I want to achieve. I have this vision that I want to fulfill, and I have to fulfill it. Like they come inside of like extraordinary passion and inspiration, and they're really looking to play a bigger game. So a lot of high performers who are doing really great things in the world, and they're just looking to see, can I realize my potential, and what is the thing that's going to give me the edge? So a lot of my clients are pro athletes and very
Mm.
successful entrepreneurs and CEOs of Fortune 100 companies, things of this nature, where they're just, playing a big game. They're living large in the world, and they just want to see, like, how do I get that extra 1 to 5% that's
Mhm.
going to make the big difference? And that's where we come in. And we really look at it from pattern perspective, right? Everything
Mm.
starts with emotional training, because that really does drive all of our behavior, choices,
Mm.
decisions, and action. From there, we look at what are the mental thought strategies that are going to produce the results. And then we make sure that that translates to the nervous system, like, so that
Mm.
we physically feel that experience in the body. And we make sure that that's aligning with the actions that we want to take. So we really look at training, the inner reality through a systemized approach.
Mm.
Like, people go to the gym to work with a personal trainer or like a nutritionist to dial in their physical body.
Yeah.
Like, we are that for the emotional aspect of people's reality, their
Mm.
thoughts, as well as, like I said, nervous system from a brain perspective.
Mm.
And I find that when that aligns, like it changes the game.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned it, because when you go into anything, I mean, you could be a high achiever, let's say if you're in a sort of ball game and that's your thing, but now you say there's much more to me than just playing ball. What else is my fullest potential? And one thing I love what you're doing is that people don't just have one thing. The expression of you growing and growing isn't like a one step process. Oh, I'm the greatest business person, or I'm the greatest ball player. But there's always many facets to people that can continue to grow on their life as they go through life. Okay, now you've gotten that. What else can I do next to even grow even further and expand my potential even further?
Yeah,
Mm.
absolutely. And I think, when I think of high achievers, yeah, I think it's really a person inside of one space, right? Like, I'm willing to change my life for the better. I'm willing
Mm.
to evolve beyond where I am.
Mhm.
And the second component is I'm actually willing to do something about it.
Mhm.
And although that seems like that's a lot of people, I find that it really is the exception, right? Even though
Yeah.
we live in this sort of personal develop minded sort of culture, or
Yeah.
there's a self-help book
Mm.
on every bookshelf. We kind of assume that people want to, better themselves. But I find that, a lot of people might think about a better life,
Mhm.
but to actually take that next step and execute toward one, is something that not everybody is up to or wants to do. But we can always
Why?
get to the next level if we want to.
Yeah, share with me, because I heard Tony Robbins say that many years back, that very few people who come there actually take the stuff he gives them and actually explodes with it. Why is that?
Yeah. I think it's like I spoke to earlier. At least what I've seen now.
Mm.
At this point, I've trained thousands of people one-on-one, and tens of thousands, through seminars all over the world, right? Japan, Europe, United States, etc.
Mhm.
And I find that, again, like, that point, that inflection point, if we just look at pain being a motivator, if I'm in a lot of pain, I'm willing to do a lot to get out of that pain, right?
Mm.
Or if there's something that's really close to my heart, that's really meaningful, and I want to create an outcome that's just led by a sense of almost like I have to create that outcome of that result, right? I had a client that, she had breast cancer, and
Mm.
she moved through that, and she was fairly wealthy, and so she decided that she wanted to support women inside of breast cancer because that was close to her heart. And inspiration, drove her to literally help thousands and thousands of women, right?
Mm.
And those are places of high emotional influence. And
Mm.
so if we're really lit up, we're going to take a lot of action. And what I mean by lit up is we feel passionate, we feel inspired, we wake up
Mhm.
joyful every day. Like there's something close to our heart that's important to fulfill. Or the other side, which is I'm not sure how I got here, but
Yeah.
my life has to change. I'm not willing to accept this pain another day. We'll
Mhm.
do a lot to make change happen. When we're in the middle spectrum and we're kind of like mildly uncomfortable, or life is okay, that's like the death zone. For me, like in terms of transformation or evolution or growth,
Mhm.
comfort is death. And what I mean by that is, like, complacency is kind of what comfort drives. And so it's like, well, like, to go put out the effort to make that next thing happen just feels like too much work to me.
Mm.
And if I stay here, it's just more comfortable. Like, at the end of the day, it's really just a pain pleasure negotiation that's going on for most
Wow. Yeah, I get that, because a lot of people you talk to, as long as you have a roof over your head, you're eating. I hear people say, "Well, I have a job," or
people.
I have a family and a house," and they're just like, "That's good, that's enough." But inside, they have this greater desire that they'd like to be, do, or have more.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's really like if we're real honest about it, like especially in our Western cultures, right? Like it's really easy to be comfortable today. Like we all have a pretty decent house, and most people have a car, and they've got their Netflix and their Facebook, and their mobile device that they can kind of entertain themselves with, and they have access to food and clean water, right? I've volunteered my time and fed people who are starving in third world countries and things like
Yeah.
that. Like you realize we have it really pretty good, even though at times
Hmm.
it feels like it's not that great.
Hmm.
And so it's like that comfort tends to keep us complacent sometimes.
Yeah.
And if we don't have something to motivate us beyond where we are to sort of get over that hump of temporary discomfort, then we're going to kind of sit where we are. I know one of the levers I constantly pull is I'm just unwilling to ever go back to where I was
Hmm.
before I started my journey of growth and personal development.
Yeah.
And like anytime I feel like getting a bit complacent or too comfortable, like I think about that time and I'm just
Yeah.
unwilling to revisit it. But then it's also married to, I know that if I overcome the temporary discomfort of change or effort,
Hmm.
that it's going to get better. And I've proven that
Hmm.
to myself enough times where I just know that's what I can expect. So once we kind of get over those initial humps and we kind of get to introduce ourselves to a life better
Hmm.
than what we know, that takes over a little bit. We're excited to see what's next.
Yeah, it sounds to me like what you create is momentum because now you see the possibility. You've gotten a taste of it. You're like, okay, I guess it's like when I've talked to a couple people that were on a really journey. I was 400 pounds and I lost, 200 pounds. I feel fabulous now. Now, there are many times where I'm sure it didn't feel fabulous going through the process. But, they go through it. They started to see results. That started to be the thing that kept them on the journey of continuing the transformation.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Mhm.
to that point, right? Like how many of us say we're going to get in great shape? And then we've got that daily negotiation that goes on
Yeah.
around the comfort or temporary discomfort, right? Like, I mean,
Mhm.
it's just simple, basic stuff. Like you wake up and you're warm in your bed and you're cozy and
I
you're
don't want
like,
to
oh,
go
it
to the
feels
gym.
real comfortable here. I could just lay here another hour or I could get up and then, go get on the treadmill or go to the gym
Mhm.
and then do the thing that's temporarily uncomfortable, which is,
Yeah.
literally just get in the cold room, get in the car, go do the workout that I'm
Mhm.
probably not going to enjoy, at least at first.
Mhm.
And then there's this simple state of like, do I just sort of tend to my comfort or do I get a bit
Mhm.
uncomfortable so
Yeah.
I can realize a greater capacity in the near future. And so if we don't have the emotional lever to pull on ourselves in that
Mhm.
moment, which is like, hey, if I go to the gym, I'm not going to get disease, right? I'm gonna avoid getting sick. Like for some people, that's the lever that gets them going, especially if
Yeah.
they've been sick before. And
Mhm.
so that is like the idea of being sick is more uncomfortable than just going to the gym that day. So they go to the gym. Or if it's inspiration, like, oh, you know what? Like I'm going to be able to hike that mountain, or I'm going to, I know I have a good friend right now who's getting married soon, and
Mhm.
she wants to look great in her wedding dress. And so,
Mhm.
like, all of a sudden, the inspiration of how she wants her wedding day to go,
Mhm.
like, she's lost more weight than she's ever lost, and she is exercising profusely because this wedding day is in her mind. She has a
Yeah.
vision of inspiration motivating her action, and so now this like momentary sort of
Mhm.
comfort discomfort negotiation that goes on each day when she wakes up,
Mhm.
all of a sudden the inspiration of that wedding day is driving her action, and the discomfort or the thought of not looking the way she wants on this special day
Yeah.
all of a sudden drives what she needs. Now, after she
Mhm.
gets married, she might be in trouble. We'll see. But as far as right now, it's a good motivator.
I'm seeing a couple things from what you're saying here. One, you keep referring to emotional lever. You need that emotional lever, and a sense of urgency needs to be there. It needs to be this pain or sense of urgency that this is not going to go away, and I really need to, as you said, for you, make a change. In the case of the woman for her wedding day, well, the wedding day is coming closer and closer, so there's that sense of urgency and that emotional, as you call it, lever.
Yeah, yeah. It
Hmm.
all starts with emotion, right? Like if we really look at it, every choice and decision that we make, whether it's a micro choice or a big one, in terms of life, like who do we marry, right? Or it's just like what do I eat today? If we really understand what drives our behavior, it all
Hmm.
starts as an emotional pattern that gets
Hmm.
activated inside of us. Many of us aren't even aware that the emotion has been activated or is present.
Hmm.
Then we think about it a minute and then we do stuff, right? We order salad or we order the burger, right? Or like from in an entrepreneurial sense, we either continue moving forward even though we have business challenges or we quit. And
Mm.
like each of these things, whether it's an daily decision we make on what food are we going to eat, or it's more severe, like, am I going to give up on my business, or am I going to persevere even though this has been a hard year, right? Like COVID. Like the emotional negotiation is what determines whether we persevere and we move forward and we get the result, or we don't. And for many people, we don't understand how to read those emotional blueprints, much less how do we train and align them with the vision that we want to fulfill, so that we sort of guarantee the outcome before we ever begin.
I love that. Now, I'm guessing there'll be many people with many different issues, maybe in their business, maybe their personal life, maybe their health. For me, recently, what got me on a path of health and fitness was a couple months ago, seeing that I was heading towards diabetes and didn't like that option. So that prompted me to make some changes that now don't seem that hard, but only because of that emotional lever of diabetes.
Right.
But so someone here maybe doesn't know what that emotional lever is for them. How do they begin to get in touch with what is their major pain point or emotional lever so they can tap into making those changes?
Yeah. Well, I think it starts in two places, right? One is we've got to know, like, where is the destination that we want to go to, and
Mhm.
why do we want to go there? Like, that's the first emotional lever that we've got to learn to sort of get in touch with and activate. And I'm not just speaking kind of like getting in shape, right? Like, oh, it'd be good for me to eat better. But
Mhm.
I'm speaking more something that's really going to impact us, kind of like what you just shared just now, which is like,
Mhm.
oh, if I don't change, I'm going to get diabetes, and here's all the things that are going to happen to me in a negative sense, right?
Mhm.
Or kind of like my friend's wedding, like that is something that is extremely important to her, and so like that's a big lever to pull when
Mhm.
she imagines her wedding on kind of the love based side of things, right?
Yeah.
And so if the emotional lever is significant, it's going to override
Mhm.
whatever the habit is, that comes up emotionally throughout the day,
Mm.
on both sides of that. And then the other emotional lever is, what's it going to cost me if I don't do it? So if I don't fulfill this vision, and I don't move in the direction of that, well, what is the regret that I'm going to know, or what is the uncertainty that I'm going to know, or like, what am I going to wake up to tomorrow if I
Consequence.
continue
Yeah.
moving in a negative sense, right? So
Mhm.
it's like the positive and the negative are what
Mhm.
we want to identify, but not in a way where we just think about it, but in a way that it really like impacts us and means something for us at
Mhm.
a heart level.
Yeah. Like, what is the defining outcome? Like, for me, the idea of having to shoot up, it's insulin a couple times a day, not fun option. So that's something, if I imagine, I'm like, no, don't like that option. I want to stay away from that picture. So yeah, I mean, that's a good emotional trigger for me. I don't know what other people might be going through, but I love that you mentioned that, the good, the positive, and the negative, and what are the consequences of both. If you can really see that, then it'll keep you on the road of not getting off when things feel a bit tough.
Yeah, then we start to drive our emotional training and conditioning, as opposed to being compliant or complicit to the emotional conditioning that has been trained or ingrained by way of just our past experiences of life,
Mhm.
and it really lives a bit unconscious for many people, right? We can start to really design and train it a bit. I know for me, like part of why I'm successful in business and why I built wealth is because I had the experience of having no money, right? I remember being in Santa Monica, California, and I added up like how much I was making at the time. It was like $997. I remember, because it was just short of 1,000. And that's not a lot of money in Santa Monica, California,
Mhm.
right? Like it costs a lot to live. And I remember like living in the fear, like, how am I going to pay my rent, and what am I going to do about bills? And just like the agony of sort of living in that reality drove me to name and mark. And it was like, hey, if I made 5,000 a month, I wouldn't have to worry about rent, and I could,
Mhm.
engage in trainings that I want to engage in, and like I'm gonna be okay. Like, I know life is okay.
Mhm.
And I remember like I got to 5,000 a month, and then all of a sudden it was like, oh, like the pain still motivated me because I didn't want to ever end up back there. But now it was like, oh, look how much better life is because I was able to hit this mark. And then I remember
Mhm.
I set another mark, like 10,000 a month, and then it
Mhm.
was 20,000, then it was 50,000, it was 100,000, and each time I kind of hit this new mark, it met this new reality that I got to live in.
Mhm.
But still today, 20 years later, from when I set that initial intention, like
Mhm.
I still have the memory of what it was like to sort of just not have enough to literally survive. So when
Mhm.
I think about that, I immediately am ready to take action, confront whatever challenge. If I
Mhm.
got a business situation going on, it becomes necessary to tend it, even though the reality today is really, really good, and nowhere, nowhere near that dire reality is where I am at, or where the business is at, right? But I still sort of activate that for myself emotionally, just to keep myself driving toward the vision, the outcome, the benchmarks that I want to achieve. So if we have these emotional levers that we know how to turn on to influence our behavior and our action, and we tie it to the result we want to get, there's literally no result we can't get. Like when I work with a client and those emotional levers are clearly lined up and tied to the result they want, it's guaranteed. Like I know it's going to happen. If those emotions aren't lined up, then it's almost like the opposite. It's guaranteed not to happen.
Now I'm wondering something. You say you remember the pain point. You met your first goal of 5,000, then 10,000, then further and further. Did it get easier each time? Because now you start to see that, oh, I can do this. Did it become easier for you to reach your next goal and your next goal, or was it just another challenge that I have to overcome?
Well, I think it was two things. Like it was easier it was easier and more challenging, right? So emotionally it was easier because joy and inspiration and fun took over. And so even though we were doing, like I was working harder, or maybe putting in more hours, or traveling more than before, it didn't seem like work to me at all, because I was having a blast. So it was easier from an emotional standpoint, because these higher, more love-based states took over. And all of a sudden the game was fun, right?
That's awesome. Yeah.
And then it also became easier because if we measure appropriately, right, we have to know where we are and where we're going. And if we can measure appropriately and go, hey, this strategy is working, and we put more resources into that strategy, that's going to get us the result more quickly. But if we can effectively measure that a strategy is not working, then we can abandon it, see what we learned from it, and then move forward. And I know that sounds simple and obvious, but I think a lot of times we struggle with something that's not working and we double down on the effort. But effort doesn't actually mean that we get to the result. And I think a lot of people think that if they work hard, they put in the effort, that they deserve the outcome. But effort doesn't make you deserving of the outcome. You have to actually do the right things. And so it got easier also because I got more intelligent around how I operated and functioned. And as I grew and I got more knowledgeable around business and sales and marketing and strategy, and just better at my craft, that made it easier because momentum took over. I started to become known for what I do. And now all of a sudden people are seeking you out rather than you, sort of pounding pavement, so to speak. It was more challenging in a sense that anytime you want to play a bigger game from where you are, there's going to be a growth curve that you have to sort of endure, where that temporary discomfort occurs. But once you realize what you get to access on the other side of that, and if you play the game right, it becomes fun. That challenge and kind of meeting the challenge, so to speak. It just depends on how we relate to it.
I love that you say that. How do you relate to it? Because I think so often, one of my mentors people always say to me, when do I get to a point when I've reached it, like the success? And he's like, no. If you're thinking that, just stop, because it's not, you get there, it's all over. No, you don't want it. You want to enjoy the process. So fall in love with the learning of it, the growth of it, the expansion of it, because it's not an all, oh, I reached it, I lost 100 pounds, I'm done. It's like, no, your body's always changing. So, and your life is always changing, and you can always expand and grow. This has been awesome. I don't want us to leave though without people finding out how they can find out more about the inner matrix system, more about you. How can they do that, Joey?
Yeah, best way is my two websites, innermatrixsystems.com, or just my name, joeyklein.com.
Very simple. Yes, it is on your show page, which will go up later tonight, and everyone can go out there and get with it. Lever your way up, find that emotional lever so you can get that pain threshold, get over it, and kick butt. I just have to thank you again, Joey Klein, for coming this evening and chatting with our audience. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure. Thank you.
You betcha.
Like, subscribe, and share this episode. To listen to more savvy episodes and savvy biz tips, go to www.lifeunscriptedradio.com. To find out about our paid sponsorship opportunities or how to become a guest, email Christina at lifeunscriptedradio.com.